It's camp time. So John Wooden's a legendary basketball coach, the late John Wooden. He used to always say, you win the games before you play them. Mm-hmm. Belichick, to a large degree. My buddy Damian Woody used to always say that when he was playing offensive line for Belichick. He said, you felt like you won the games on Thursday, Friday, that you were just more prepared. Yep. So let's go to camps. Give me the best camp, most organized camp you were ever at, and then the least functional camp you were ever at.
Yeah, I think so. One of the most organized camps I think I've ever been around was at USC with Coach Carroll. He knew how to make practices and competition fun within the competition, right? And so football is stressful enough. Obviously when you wake up in the mornings, sometimes it's hard to get out of the bed. Your body hurts like hell, and you're just in pain, right? And you're sore as heck. And so anytime a coach can find ways to just make it a little less stressful, it makes the practice flow. Right. And so Coach Carroll was a master at this. We had competition Tuesdays, and competition Tuesdays were, you had one-on-one pass blocking drills with the linebackers, or you had one-on-one routes with, the linebackers and safeties, or you had the receivers had one-on-ones, and Coach Carroll would put you up. He would put the best competitions up on the screen in team meetings. And so if you got embarrassed or if you got beat, the whole team was going to let you know about it right there on the spot. And so that added to, I think, the camaraderie.
Intensity, accountability.
Yeah, accountability. Like if you got embarrassed, and there was a couple of times where I was on there for maybe some pass blocking drills, but I would always, get the linebackers back in one-on-one drills because I knew I could kill them in one-on-ones. So I thought that was one of the most organized I've ever been around. And I think the least organized I've ever been around was my first year in Miami under Coach Sperano, rest in peace. And it was just chaos. Like we had fights every day in practice. Sometimes those fights might have carried into the locker rooms.
Wow.
It was pretty crazy. And it was I was coming from New Orleans. We had just won a Super Bowl. And I'm going to this, and I'm like, we got a lot of work to do. We're not going to be that good this year if we continue down this path. And so we had guys that were late all the time in practice.
Wow.
Our star players. Star players were the ones that were also part of the issue. And that was one of the reasons why, we weren't that successful that year.
Well, I'm watching Hard Knocks on HBO. I'm not a fan of cameras. Some players, Antonio Cromartie said it wasn't that big of a deal. He said a lot of the stuff, it's on the sideline. Yeah. But it did look, we were talking as a staff this morning as we were preparing the show, that the Raiders looked a little loose. Mm-hmm. And there is a fine line. Was Pete Carroll loose? Was Sean Payton loose? How rigid do they have to be? So Sperano, it was too loose.
It was too loose.
So when you look at the Raiders, and some players are pushing back at John, I mean, what's the standard for intensity, rigidity, looseness? Where does it fall?
So I was my first training camp in the NFL was with Sean Payton, his first rookie year as a head coach.
Wow.
And that training camp was hell. And it was, you hear the term hell week. It was a real hell week. We were hitting twice a day. We were at Millsaps in Mississippi. It was hot as heck. And it was tough. Like he was trying to change the culture of the New Orleans Saints, right? Because before he got there, they were the Aints, and, fans would show up to the stadium with paper bags over their heads. And so Sean wanted to right away, change the culture. So he came in kind of with that Bill Parcells mentality. Now, he's a disciple of Bill Parcells. And so he brought that mentality to...
Did it work?
It worked. It definitely worked. I don't remember any times where, there was a lot of pushback. There was only one practice I remember where, the locker room kind of flooded, sewage flooded, and,
Lord.
Players got mad about that. And there was one other time where, and I will say this, where Sean, he was beating us up too much. And the players, there was one day where we pushed back and we didn't want to come out to practice. And we knew that as long as we had Drew Brees on our side, we were good. And so we ended up going out to practice, but I don't think we hit that day. So I think there is a fine line between, because now the Sean Payton now that I've seen, that's a totally different coach than when I was there.
Gruden looks a little looser than he used to be.
Gruden is a totally different coach than when he was with Tampa, right? And probably with the Raiders the first time. So I think, there is definitely a different Gruden we're seeing on TV, much like there's a different Sean Payton now, because I'm watching some of these games. Like when I went to, some of the playoff games, after the games, they're in the locker room celebrating. They got the strobe lights going and partying and dancing. And I was like, this would have never happened when we was playing.
Right.
When we were there.
Well, yeah, I think culture's changed. I think there's more transparency. And I also think, I think players are richer, they're more empowered, so you have to let them win sometimes too.
Yeah,
I
agree.
think that's a reality. Sometimes players,
I 100%
let them
agree
celebrate
with
their
that.
touchdowns. Let's give the guys some fun, right?
Yeah.
Because, by the way, football asks a lot from its athletes.
It does.
A lot.
It's stressful enough as it is, and so anytime you see coaches that, find a way to just make it just a little less stressful that day, it just makes the practice and the day go by easier.
By the way, I am, I never want to be, as I age, grumpy old guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I try to embrace new stuff. But there are things that I believe in sports,
Mm-hmm.
and I still believe the peanut butter jelly sandwich is the best thing in the world to eat when you're hungry.
I
don't
agree
care.
100%.
I don't want to hear
I
about
agree
kale
100%.
shakes.
No, I agree 100%.
All right.
I made a living off of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in college.
So a lot of old stuff is still great.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't like my quarterbacks putting their hat on backwards and chugging beer. I don't like it. I just don't. You are a $1 billion marketing promotional tool. So you tell me as a player, do you love when you see Baker doing that?
During training camp, no. If this was off season, or if this was, on a bye week, there's so much hype surrounding the Cleveland Browns right now that I'm almost a little worried it's too much hype for them to handle, right? Because they've already won a Super Bowl according to, the media and everybody else. They still have a lot of work to do. And so during training camp, listen, is this going to make or break his career? Right?
It is the youngest locker room in the NFL.
It is the youngest.
So to me, if anything, they need some maturity.
Yes, they do.
Remember when Russell Wilson took over the Seahawks years ago?
Yep.
Pete's a very good the book on Pete Carroll, he's great with young players.
Yeah, he is.
And then after about 7 years, the stories get old. Richard Sherman's like, I've heard the story, coach,
Yeah.
right? So Pete, with Russell Wilson came in, it was a very young team.
Yeah.
And what was special about it is that Russell was uniquely mature
Yeah, he was.
as a quarterback,
He was.
incredibly coachable. Deshaun Watson, by the way, I think he's uniquely Andrew Luck.
I agree.
When you got and Colts are a pretty young team. I think when you're young, I like a mature quarterback.
Yes.
I think Baker feels like a frat boy sometimes.
He does. And, I think he plays to that as well sometimes. And that's his personality. But I think to the optics of seeing Baker chug beer during training camp, all you do is open yourself up for scrutiny, because if you start the season off 0-2, 0-3,
Oh, boy.
they're going to the social media is going to remind you real quick that, hey, remember that time you was chugging beer? Maybe you should have been chugging water and get ready for practice or something. You know what I mean?
No, I mean optics. Optics matter.
Optics matter, and you're the franchise quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, a team who has historically been bad for a long time. You're trying to change the culture. You're trying to be part of that culture changing process. And so, not to say that I love him getting the crowd hype. I love everything about what he did, except just the part with chugging the beer. Now, again, if it's off season, bye week, I'm cool with it. I'm okay. During training camp, probably not the best time.
By the way, did you ever hold out? You held out once.
No.
You never did?
held out. Mm-mm.
I don't love holdouts, but I sometimes get them. I do think running backs now feel like they're being marginalized.
Yep.
You ever have a friend hold out? Like, I wonder if my team training camp's hard. So I'm Zeke. All my guys are in training camp. Now I may be working out in Cabo, but I am in Cabo.
Yeah.
There is something.
I love Cabo, by the way, but
I love Cabo.
That would not be the place where I would go to hold out.
Right. But guava smoothies, it's a great place to go. So it is. I wonder, do you think there's any players that look at him and think, bruh, come on to the States?
Yeah, I'm sure there are players, because it feels. Listen, I go to Cabo to vacation. I go to Cabo to, go on the beach and drink margaritas and go to Squid Row and, all these other places, all these other bars down there. And so it's not the place where you go to stay in shape and to work out. And so I'm not saying that Zeke's not staying in shape, not working out. But, yeah, I'm sure there are players that feel like that. Like, you could be in Texas holding out, or you could be, I think he's from Ohio. From Ohio, holding out and working out. But I think when you hear Cabo, everybody in here associates Cabo with vacation.
Remember when Tony Romo on an off week a few years ago?
Oh, yeah. I killed him for that.
He got And again, it was an off week, but I remember saying on the air, it's just the optics aren't great.
The optics of it. You open yourself up for scrutiny, and then if you come back, let's say he comes back
and he doesn't miss
games. He's out of shape. The first thing people are going to say was, well, you was in Cabo. What would you expect? You know what I mean? So it's the optics of it, and that's why, again, do I think he may miss some games? I think he could miss some games because that's his only leverage.
Reggie Bush, by the way, the college football show.
Yep.
It debuts August 31st.
Ooh.
They didn't give me that list.
I think it's the 20th. It's in a couple days. 23
what is it,
days.
Sammy?
23 days from now.
August 31st.
We got 23 days from now.
All right, 23 days from now. And Labor Day weekend. By the way, interesting game. I don't even know what network has it. Auburn, Oregon will be very interesting because Oregon's got the best offensive line in the Pac-10, in Pac-12 in probably a decade.
Yep.
And Auburn
Justin
makes
Herbert.
Special. And Auburn makes a living on defensive linemen in the NFL.
They do.
That's a really big game for the West.
I think
if Auburn wins it, they should. If Oregon gets pummeled,
it's huge for the Pac-12.
Because I think Oregon's the most talented Pac-12 team. Maybe not the best, but the most talented.
I agree. And Justin Herbert is special, and I think he has a chance to compete for the Heisman.
Oh yeah, he's really good.
Yeah, he's really good.
Reggie Bush, good seeing you, bud. Hi everybody, thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.